From PBS NewsHour's Student Reporting Labs
and WETA,
this is On Our Minds
with Ashley
and Tyler,
a podcast about the teenage experience made by teenagers for teenagers.
Because we all need a place to feel heard.
A note before we get started. Today we're going to be discussing relationships. Issues like emotional and physical abuse come up in this conversation. If you or someone you know needs help, we have a list of resources at studentreportinglabs.org/mental health resources.
Also, we recommend you listen to this podcast with a friend or a trusted adult.
Hi, Tyler.
Hey, how's it going?
Good. So as you know, in our last episode, I interviewed poet Chin Chin. So guys, make sure to check that out if you haven't already. A lot of his poetry is about relationships, friendships, and romantic love.
Today, we're going to dive deeper into healthy and unhealthy relationships. We spoke with CEO Hood and Collin McClelland, a youth leadership coordinator for One Love Foundation.
One Love Foundation was founded in 2010 to honor the tragic death of Yardley Love, a UVA senior who was killed by her boyfriend just 3 weeks before graduation. One Love's goal is to engage and educate young people about the difference between healthy and unhealthy love. Here's our conversation with them.
Hi, Katie. Hi, Collin. Thank you so much for joining us today.
We're so happy to be here. Thanks for having us.
It's great to be here.
Earlier in the school year, when On Our Minds released the topics that we're going to explore this season of the podcast, we got a lot of interest in the topic of relationships. Teenagers want these good, healthy relationships, whether friendships or romantic ones, but it can be kind of hard to tell what's going on and if a relationship is working. Can you help define what makes a relationship a healthy one?
We all in our hearts want to be safe. We want our friends to be safe. We want to feel like we are not just in a relationship, but in a relationship with somebody who helps bring out our best self, who we can be equal with, who we can have fun with, who we can trust. So we have defined through the course of this work the 10 signs of unhealthy relationships and the 10 signs of healthy.
Is there any way that you guys could go over those 10 just so that our audience at home knows those 10 signs?
So it's comfortable pace, trust, honesty, independence, respect, equality, kindness, fun, healthy conflict, and taking responsibility are our 10 signs of a healthy relationship. And then I can go over our 10 unhealthy signs if you guys would like.
Yeah, that would be good too.
Awesome. So we start off with intensity, possessiveness, manipulation, isolation, sabotage, belittling, guilting, volatility, what we talked about earlier, feeling like you're walking on eggshells. At any second, something might pop off because you do one little thing wrong and all of a sudden it's the end of the world. Betrayal, and then deflecting responsibility, never taking full responsibility for the actions that they're having.
What are the effects, short-term and long-term, of unhealthy relationships on teen mental and emotional well-being?
The reason we teach about unhealthy relationships is because every abusive relationship was once an unhealthy one. So if we can teach you the signs of unhealthy, then you can recognize before it gets really bad. Young people we work with tell us that the health of my relationships dictates my mental health.
I feel like as a teenager, everybody around me is always getting into relationships. Do you find that teenagers are more likely to find themselves in abusive relationships because it's our first time really getting into serious or more serious relationships? And as young people, if we see a friend in an unhealthy relationship, how can we help them?
When you're in that relationship for the first time, like we kind of talked about, especially people who don't have relationship education, you don't know what's unhealthy and what's healthy. You're spending all your time, you're getting isolated, you're getting belittled at sometimes, and you think this is completely normal because you've never been taught otherwise. We want to have people know that the signs you're seeing are unhealthy. And on the other side of that, we wanted them to start practicing healthy relationship signs because chances are you're probably not going to be with them forever, but you're going to keep building on those relationship patterns that will eventually help you form the healthiest relationship you possibly can later on in your life.
I think your second question was about if you have a friend you're concerned about. It can be really hard to speak up. It's really awkward. And we're sort of trained that other people's relationships are not our business. That's another thing we're really trying to change. We want people to see that their job as friends is to look out for their friends and keep lines of communication open. One of the most important things to know, if you finally get up the courage to say you're concerned about a relationship, you'll say things like, you should just end it with them. They don't treat you well. And that is usually not that effective because the person you're talking to, your friend who you're worried about, cares about this person. So if you come out attacking the person, it's not gonna be a good strategy. Instead, showing a lot of empathy and saying things like, I heard the way he talked to you the other night, and I just remember when somebody talked to me that way, it made me feel low. It made me feel small. And I just want you to know I love you and I believe in you and I'm here for you. And be really just make sure you do everything you can to keep the line of communication open. They need to know that they can come to you if things escalate. Now, if you have major concerns, so for example, if someone threatens you with a gun, if somebody grabs you around the throat and your friend tells you this, those are major signs that it's gone way beyond unhealthy. Those are signs that you're in danger of being killed. So as a friend, sometimes you do have to figure out, who am I going to go to for help? What local resources am I going to call? Because too often we think the worst thing can't happen. And the truth is it does. And so it's really important that friends have the information they need to be able to be helpful and to intervene.
I definitely get that. I feel like so often whenever I'm talking with my friends about like our emotions and the way that we feel and the things that are going on around us, it's hard to recognize things for what they are. How do you know if a relationship can still be repaired or if it's just time to move on?
Trust your gut, which is something just really important to learn to do. And it takes time. When the relationship has become exhausting, if you feel like you can't talk to your partner or your friend about how you're feeling, if you feel like they're going to get mad at you, that is another not great sign, because in a healthy relationship, you should be able to say, it really is hard for me when you blow up my phone or when you show up unannounced or when you act like you don't like my friends. We're not taught how to have those conversations, so it can feel awkward. But it's interesting. Once you learn how to have them, and once you practice it, it becomes much easier.
At the end of the day, it's like relationships are supposed to be mutual beneficial. You're supposed to be getting something out of it. You're supposed to be giving something back to your partner in the way of helping each other out, becoming better people, having fun with each other, being comfortable. And once you start to move away from that, I think that's when you need to look into that relationship and decide, is this worth it or is it not? Is it harming me more than it's benefiting me? And you can also come back if it becomes healthy again. It doesn't have to be a one and done sort of thing, but if you need to take that time to breathe, and if they won't let you take that time, that's probably another indicator that, hey, it's time, it's done.
When you're in these relationships, sometimes what you're calling unhealthy is actually in the abuse territory. It's a very hard thing to understand when you're in it because you care about the person. And when people are in abusive relationships, they call it different things. They call it drama, they call it toxicity, they call it up and down. They don't want to call it abuse. If you find that when you're ending a relationship with somebody that you have significant unhealthy behaviors with, breakup is the most dangerous time. Abusive relationships are about control. And when you break that and you say, I'm done, volatile things can happen. So it's really important that you talk to friends, that you're not alone, that you safety plan, and that you just do this in a way that keeps you as safe as possible.
Some people say that if you're not happy by yourself, you can't be happy with someone else. I'm not sure how I feel about that statement. So I was wondering like what opinions you had about that.
The process of really learning to be okay with yourself is like not something that happens overnight. But what I will say is believing that you have value in a relationship, that you are a person that is worthy of being liked, cared for, loved, all that stuff. Even though you're not perfect, none of us are perfect. Too often when I was younger, I lowered the bar. I was so desperate to be cared for that I put up with bad behavior. So I think knowing what your bar is and being honest with yourself when your bar is not being met, that doesn't mean, oh, go break up right away. It means we need to have a conversation. And if maybe the conversation goes well and you can move on your way together, and maybe it doesn't, and you say it's time for me to leave.
What else do you really think the teenagers should know about relationships?
There's this like romanticism that makes you think like the first person you're going to meet is like the one, like maybe this is it. Maybe this is the thing, you know? The truth is like we should all expect our first relationship will not be the one. Like we should expect to break up. Like if you could go into relationships knowing like this probably isn't going to last, but I want to be in this as long as it's fun and we're treating each other with respect and we're honest and I feel like I'm my best self. And if that changes, then it'll have to end and I'll go find my other person. I think relationships sometimes are like a status symbol in a way. And I also think we're not really realistic about how important it is to learn to separate in a healthy way. This is part of growing up. This is part of figuring out who you are and who you want to be with in the world.
I think that the work you guys are doing is so important. I think that the more we know as young people about healthy relationships, the more we can recognize our own unhealthy behaviors, the more we can help people who are in unhealthy relationships. So I really want to say thank you for speaking with us, and thank you for doing all the work that you're doing.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
So great. Thank you so much.
Tyler, what would you say are your biggest takeaways from that conversation?
Something that really stood out to me was like being able to have healthy conflict and being able to take responsibility, because like you can have an argument with somebody or get in a fight or whatever, but at the end of the day, like you still love them, and you know, you can recognize that sometimes things go too far, but if you can take responsibility for the things that you've done or whatever and try to make things right, like that speaks volumes about your character, not even like in romantic relationships, but just as a person in general. What about you?
The whole mission of One Love is so important to me because I think that education about relationships is just so important, especially in kind of our world where media kind of romanticizes the more toxic and the more unhealthy aspects of relationships.
That was such a good point. To learn more about One Love Foundation, their resources, or how to get involved, visit www.joinonelove.org.
Next up, personal stories about love and relationships from students.
And after that, we'll be recording in person at the South by Southwest EDU conference in Austin, Texas. Woo!
This episode was produced by lead podcast producer Briget Ganske and production assistant Jaylah Moore-Ross. Editing by youth media producer Mohammad Pasha.
Editorial director Marie Cusick and executive producer Leah Clapman.
Theme music by Jackson Teedens.
And additional music by Blue Dot Sessions.
If you or someone you know needs help, we have a list of resources at studentreportinglabs.org/mental health resources.